So another pause, another announcement from our sponsor. This time it's Microsoft, and at the booth of Microsoft in about 10 minutes there will be a workshop held called Office 365 is more than just an office. You will learn what's new in Office 2016 and how to easily find features in all the menus and how to use them the right way. So if you're interested in that, you can head to Microsoft's booth right now. As for here, our next speaker is Alexander Tonnisson, co-founder, CEO, and investor at Buildit hardware accelerator in Estonia. Alexander, please come to the stage. Put your hands together for Alexander Tonnisson.
Hello. As already said, my name is Alexander. I'm founder at Buildit Hardware Accelerator. So we are a early stage investment fund, and we particularly invest only in hardware and IoT space. And typically, I would have a different T-shirt on me. This time it was in laundry, so I had to come with this one. But it says hardware is hard. So do I really believe in it? I don't. But I'm an engineer, so I'm afraid of people, right? So if I have hardware on hard, so they don't come and talk to me. I once saw somebody say on stage that engineers are extremely smart, but they say very stupid things. And he also said that salespeople are exactly vice versa. And that was probably a very stupid thing to say. So now I have all salespeople hating me. But it is true in a way that the hardware scares off investors. So my idea today here is to give you a few pointers or a few ideas why actually hardware is better than software. Now if we look at it, it all started with Arduino, 3D printing, smartphones. And how it changed the world was that it made entry barriers to build your very first product lower, like significantly lower. And so many people started building their own stuff that they even gave a name to it. They call it the hardware revolution, the maker movement. It has like a lot of names in it. Yet, if we look around, we still see cables. We don't see many smart devices around. I have a quantified self device here, but I don't see very many in the audience, right? And even for you guys, you are innovators, you are early adapters, and you're not wearing one. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the growth is still coming. So if you ever want to start with your hardware startup, now is a pretty good time. This is what happened with apps. iOS, Android, doesn't matter. It had an exponential growth. Right now, if you go on Android shop, I'm using Android, so that's why I know the numbers. They have more than 2 million apps available, and that's a lot. Now, if we think about what might happen with hardware, one thing is absolutely certain with 100%, that everything which can be internet connected will be internet connected in the future. There's different numbers, but people predict that by 2020, we have roughly anything between 40 to 100 billion internet-connected devices. So today, this number is roughly the same number as we have population in the world. It's roughly 8 billion. So there's 10 times growth in 5 years. So this is something which you can take as a fact. This will happen. And you can also say that to your investors. Now, thanks to the internet connection on hardware devices, what we see is a lot of new business models turning up. We didn't have that before. So hardware as service, that means that you don't actually sell the hardware, you rent it. It works very well, it has very nice margins. For example, we have a company in portfolio called Coffee Cloud. So they measure how much coffee shops sell so that people wouldn't steal the coffee. It turns out that stealing coffee is very, very popular. If they would sell the device, it would cost roughly 40 euros, and that's it. But they're renting the device. and the cost per rent is roughly 20 euros a month. Now imagine the difference in revenue, margins, customer lifetime values, etc. Hardmium is a new business model, meaning that hardware unlocks premium features of software. Very common. So Pencil 53 is one of the good examples. If you want to have premium features of the app, you actually have to buy the pencil. Very cool. Hardware as platform. I had a very interesting chat with the vice president of Ubuntu for IoT this week. And these guys are building a hardware platform for apps. So in the future, you can download an app on your router. So for example, you have a Wi-Fi access point, you can download apps on that. So you can change the behavior of your hardware. So you're not selling hardware anymore, you're selling the platform. And of course, big data. So Nest is not selling thermostats, Nest is gathering data and making presumptions on that data and selling this to the customers, right? So business model is completely different. Here's an example from our portfolio, a HuntLock. What they do, they make hunting smart. So it turns out that it's a common problem that hunters kill each other in the hunt, just because of the fact that they don't know where the other person is. So we end up shooting them accidentally. There's roughly 3,000 people killed in the United States alone every year. So they came up with an app that shows where all the people or all the participants in the hunt are. So they had steady user growth, they had recurring monthly revenues, and this is the first time when they actually started producing the hardware. This yellow thing or orange thing is a dog tracker. Hunting dogs are extremely expensive. So if you lose one, you're actually losing like a lot of money. And of course, also you're emotionally attached to your pet, right? So now they can track where the dogs are in the forest. So they first had a software platform, and then they went to the hardware. It's a very smart way to do it. This is a good one. I absolutely love that. If we think roughly 4,000 years back, ever since the money was invented, it hasn't really changed how we trade. So you give money, and you expect something in return. It still works that way. And this is the huge advantage of hardware. It's a psychological advantage over software. People are so much easier to give money out when they get actually something in return. It's a good example. People spend $800 on an iPhone, and then they get frustrated that they have to pay $1 for an app. So think about it. So if you're building hardware, you have this huge advantage that you have something which you can get or give to the customer, and he can hold in hand. So this hasn't changed. An average Android app costs 6 cents, right? So now if you look at all the Vanity Metrics which software as service companies have, they're based on these numbers. iOS is doing a bit better. It's 19 cents. When was the last time you bought a hard piece of hardware for 19 cents, right? So basically, in SaaS, it's very, very common to build up a user base and then try to figure out how to monetize it. And most companies fail. They don't know how to monetize their user base. In hardware, it's exactly the opposite. You first build up the cash flow, and then you think maybe there's other ways to monetize them. Upselling, selling services on top of your hardware, etc. Again, a huge advantage. Customer acquisition costs. If you think about large retailers, Home Depot, Walmart, etc., they can move large quantities of your product with almost no marketing budget, like almost zero, if you're already in retail. In SaaS, apps completely different. It's very typical for a SaaS company to have to work like 2 to 3 years to recoup the customer acquisition cost. So let's say if you're spending $300 to board a customer, he pays you $10 every month. It takes 2.5 years. Very typical numbers. I'm not making this up. These are averages. In hardware, customer acquisition cost is relatively low. In hardware, rule of thumb is that if you sell one device, you should be able to produce 2 devices for that money, right? Now, if you calculate that back to the customer acquisition cost, you get very nice numbers. Huge advantage. Customer lifetime value. People are very brand loyal. So if you look, anyone who has an iPhone, he typically also has an iPad. He typically also has a Air or something like that. You don't see that loyalty on the software side. This is a good example with things. What they do, they try to lock in the customers. So it's called vendor lock-in. And for you as a hardware company, this is a huge advantage again. Withings has done it very well. They have blood pressure monitors, they have weights, they have activity monitors. So if you end up buying one of them, customer acquisition cost for that company goes to 0, lifetime value of that customer goes to the roof. Again, a very good place to be in. Now, if you approach investors, typically they don't understand that. And this is something you need to understand. If you compare yourself to a SaaS company who has, let's say, 1 million users, and some of them pay, most of them don't, and they have nice monthly recurring revenues. Right here, 4% of the users pay $10 a month. You can have the same margin or same profit in a hardware business having only 12,000 customers. Again, think about customer acquisition cost. A huge difference. It works for you, but you need to be able to explain that to your potential investors. They want to see SaaS numbers. I'm going to skip this one. Another example of our portfolio is FlipClick. So what they do, they make window blinds smart. So you can save energy, you don't have to cool your house that much. Why I brought them as an example is if you're a hardware company, you cannot think in terms of software companies or SaaS companies or an app company. In 3 months, you cannot achieve anything. So you need to be prepared to take the long way. These guys, relatively easy product, has a mechanical component, has a motor inside, has PCB inside, has an app. It's not very difficult. It took them more than a year to launch a Kickstarter campaign. So right now we're on Kickstarter, we're very successful. But 12 months is absolutely minimum to take something into production. You need to take that into consideration. And this is fine. You know why? For your competitors, it also takes at least 12 months to be there. If you launch an app and it's something which actually has a potential to make it, you have 10 competitors in 2 weeks. If you build something hardware, for competitors, it takes exactly as much time as for you, unless you have a crappy team, right? But these guys, they are very good engineers, they are very good salesmen, and still it took them more than 12 months. And of course, the crowdfunding, which doesn't work for most of the startup companies. Why I put that here is that if you decide to do a crowdfunding, be smart about it. The first question is, who is your customer? Like in the last presentation, you have to think about the customer persona. So this is a typical people who are on Kickstarter, Indiegogo. So if they're not your customers, don't do the Kickstarter. Doesn't make any sense. It's not product market fit. Most hardware companies I've seen, everyone says that their market is North America. Absolutely everyone. Have you been to North America? I'm not talking about Silicon Valley or New York. So this is what America looks like, right? It's not geeks with high salaries. It's normal people. People who shop at Walmart. Go to the Walmart and I know, and you know what I mean, right? So if your customer is an average American, there's no point doing a quick Kickstarter. Kickstarter takes roughly 6 months to prepare. Kickstarter video costs anything beginning from $5,000. If you want to do a good one, you can easily spend $20,000 on a video. And if you end up with a customer who's actually not your customer, you just spent a lot of money, you had some pre-sales, but you have no idea how to expand the business further. If you do it smartly, though, again, an advantage over software companies. That's it. My name is Alexander. I'm from Buildit, and we're an early stage investment fund in the hardware. Thank you.